I've always been fascinated with Bigfoot. You know, when you're doing a Bigfoot investigation, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for prints like this. It's pretty scary, you know. And the first time I found prints like this up in Bailey, Colorado, God, it was eye-opening experience. It's almost as if it was a religious experience because I'm looking at something this big, left, right, 4-foot gate, 4 feet between footprints, and you're thinking, oh my God, something this big is out here walking around.
But first, let's just start with what people describe.
We have enough evidence that we could convict Bigfoot, you know, for being Bigfoot.
So I started thinking about going on a quest looking for Bigfoot myself. When I look at the Bigfoot legend, I started thinking, you know, when did I start really being interested in it? And it's going to probably be a little weird here because there was a show with a $6 million man, and where he had this bionic arm. And there came the Bigfoot. And that was my probably first real introduction to the Bigfoot, the fascination of the power of this.
And so I started getting more involved in it. And the more involved, you know, I had to see for myself, if I get into Bigfoot investigations, what am I getting myself into? One of the advantages of living in Colorado, I used to live in California. Being out here in Colorado, there's more of a Native American influence out here. It's really interesting as a UFO investigator, when I talk to Native Americans and Native American elders about UFO sightings and, you know, the sky travelers and stuff, I always mention Bigfoot because they always have stories within their culture that's been going on for centuries. You know, and the story's told over and over and over again. So this is nothing new to us, or definitely nothing new to the Native Americans. It's just new to the people who don't understand the concept of Bigfoot. They just think, Bigfoot. Well, they just thought, UFOs until recently when the Pentagon finally came out and said, yeah, we're going to start investigating UFOs. There's probably enough evidence, circumstantial evidence, coming from the Native American stories, that if you use that evidence in court today, you could probably convict someone of murder. Former law enforcement, if you have enough circumstantial evidence against someone who committed a crime, they can go to jail for it. You don't have to have pictures of this guy actually stealing or robbing someone, although that helps, you know. So there's a lot of circumstantial evidence about Bigfoot. And then obviously there's a lot of evidence when it comes down to footprints.
What I find out mostly is not only how secretive this creature is, but first let's just start with what people describe. You know, sometimes it's an ape-like creature. Sometimes we refer to maybe it's a man-type creature. And then there's just all of this shape-shifting ideas. So there's a lot of things that come into Bigfoot. But at the end of the day, we all probably agree that there's some type of human characteristics could be involved in the Bigfoot sightings.
Now, this casting is from the Patterson case, the famous Bigfoot footage that you always see on TV and every one of the shows. This casting is actually not from that sighting. This casting was a year before. This is what got the Patterson to go back to the area and look for Bigfoot, because now this casting is a direct copy from the original one that I happened to pick up from another investigator who was friends with the Patterson family. So I'm really excited about this. And of course, this is definitely massive.
Well, I think when you think about what would be the best evidence out there, we have to really go look at the Patterson Gimlin film. This was in 1967, and this was where they got a shot of a Bigfoot walking through this forest. And so why is this probably so significant? Number one, it was enough viewpoint that people can see that is something besides this blurry shots of real short, quick. So I think that was probably the first real evidence that people saw to really heighten the interest that something is out there and we need to really explore what it is. And so I think that was probably the most significant moment, was that particular film.
The reason why this particular case, the Patterson case, is so credible is because how it was filmed. We didn't have a digital, era back then. We didn't have Adobe Photoshop. Didn't have computers where we could manipulate with film, like with special effects, something you would see from the Disney movies or some from the old horror flicks and stuff. So when you look at the Patterson film clip and you're thinking, okay, how are they able to do that with that technology at that period? Now, since then, there have been some investigators that are an institute basically that took the Patterson footage and completely digitized it and analyzed it. And when they digitized it, they were able to bring a little more clarity of the actual film. And when they saw that clarity, it was, oh my God. They could see muscle striations. And they could see in the arms. They could see in the legs. They could see breasts. They could see movement of the muscles and of the fat. And they realized, oh my God, this there's no way that this could be a guy in a suit. Sure, the debunkers say, well, of course, because we have suits that have water, rubber sacks and stuff inside with water to kind of give you that. But we didn't have that back then when the footage was shot. This is kind of newer technology. Now, the thing about the Patterson case, it wasn't anything where he made a lot of money on this. It was, I captured footage of a Bigfoot. And it wasn't like he was out at that time selling it and that it was all for profit. He was an investigator like me. He was a Bigfoot investigator, and he decided that after finding a footprint, he decided to go out there with the camera and see if he could actually capture something. Pretty cool. That's probably why it's one of the best sightings still.
Is there any other evidence out there when it comes down to Bigfoots? Now, me being a UFO investigator, how is there some, side-by-side correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs? And what we have heard through a lot of the people that have reported Bigfoot sightings, there's always been some type of light. And so we tend to feel that there could be some type of connection. Now, I start coming up with my own theory, my personal theory. And I think it should be something we should look at based upon the evidence that's out there. Let's start with the Bigfoot smell. This is something that people report. In fact, the smell has been known to rattle most people, something they never smelled before, something they'll never forget. Let's put that to the side, the smell. Let's also put the evidence of how they just disappear out of nowhere. They're gone. We can't find them. And let's put the evidence of lights, UFO sightings, and let's bring it all together. We as humans tend to have pets. We have pets. And if you had a house in the middle of nowhere, maybe in the mountains, maybe out in the woods, it's complete darkness, you decide to let your pet out to use the restroom, to relieve itself. And when the door opens, that's the remnants of some light, because you can see it from afar. It's just, that's all you see. Now, when the pet goes out and does its business, we're going to start getting the smell of what's happening, which, of course, Bigfoot probably does it big time, okay? It's bigger than most cases, so this is a big smell, okay? So I started thinking, could Bigfoot be pets of the extraterrestrials? So they cloak their spaceships, and they let it out to take a break. And now, this is why we can't track it, can't find it. And people think, okay, it's shapeshifts, and because I don't believe it has the wherewithal for technology. It's not speaking, and it's not using ray guns and suits. It's still got a primitive thing to it. So could it be a pet? And this is why the track stops. This is why we're smelling what we're smelling for that moment, and it disappears out of nowhere, and why we can't find it. That's my concept. That's it. That's my theory. So.
You have to understand, when you investigate Bigfoot, you're investigating a mammal that is a good 9 to 10 feet tall. If a regular chimpanzee can rip an arm off a human, they're that strong. They can rip you apart. So the Bigfoot, could you imagine, could probably just tear you in half. And unfortunately, I've actually read a couple of case reports from the Sheriff's Department out of Tennessee where there were 2 incidences where people were killed. Bigfoot investigators in the area seem to think it might have been a rogue Bigfoot at the time. One of the incidents that I read clearly on this case report was that a hunter came up to, he was hunting, and there was a tree, and the tree had a hole in the middle. And there was a human body, a torso, that was shoved, pushed in the hole of the tree. Now, the arms and legs were taken off, and they were stuck on the branches. And the gun was broken in half, laying there. Now, when I read the sheriff's report on it, it basically said, it was just some maniac guy, some deranged guy. But if you look at it from a Bigfoot perspective, that's an area, and this was in the Appalachians. That was an area where there's been a lot of Bigfoot sightings. We've always talked about how if you saw Bigfoot and you have a gun, you never shoot Bigfoot. You never want to piss them off. So the story, we think, and this is just an assumption, okay, is this guy took a shot at one, and either he heard it and one of his companions, got him, or maybe the one that he shot got him, killed him, made an example, a warning sign with the broken gun. I mean, it was unusual that would happen, that you would just take a high-powered rifle, snap it in half, and lay it there. Okay, that was the first story. The second story I read, there was a young couple that were on a day hike, and they came into this opening. Same Appalachian Mountain area, not the same location. His explanation was it was a Bigfoot that had killed a deer and was picking a deer up. And they came up on the opening, out of the woods, and his girlfriend was just panicking. She just started screaming because she's just, oh my God, what is this thing, They walked over, broke her in half, dropped her right there, walked back, picked up the deer, and walked away. Left the kid alone. He didn't say a word. He was in shock. The whole time he's just in shock, and he watched this thing come over and kill his girlfriend. And when you read the report, that's what he says. Law enforcement said it had to have been a bear walking on its hind legs over to her, killed her, walked back on its hind legs, picked up the deer, and walked away on its hind legs. Because law enforcement, I've been in law enforcement, you can't really say on a case report it was a Bigfoot, it was an alien, it was a UFO. With cattle mutilations, anytime an animal is found dead of unusual circumstances, and law enforcement who investigate it, they can tell that it wasn't a mountain lion or a bear or coyotes, that it wasn't a predator. The best I can say is animal cruelty. It had to be a human, even though there's no human evidence either. But they have to a lot of times the law enforcement agencies won't let them leave it as an unknown. Most of the time they say, well, pick one. Because these guys don't know. It's better if they just leave it as an unknown, because it makes it better. But it depends. The department I worked for, El Paso County Sheriff's Department, they're the ones who are more anti-UFO. So they would say, no, it can't be a UFO. Now, since the Pentagon's come out and saying, hey, UFOs appear to be real, and just within the last week or so, actually came out, it was members in Congress, actually, they came out and stated, yeah, we have to start investigating these things as if they're extraterrestrials. We don't think they're terrestrials. And that was just like a week ago. So we're getting that way. Now, if we're getting that way with UFOs, we've been having Bigfoot sightings for centuries out here in North America.
So I started thinking about going on a quest looking for Bigfoot myself. What would I look for? What would I do? What would I take with me? What kind of equipment or whatever? Of course, you want your infrared. Now, do I take any arsenal for protection? But I think trackers. I would probably take some, and it wouldn't be dogs because they would hear them a mile away, but we're going to have to look for footprints. We have to know where we were going. But then if I had access to military capabilities, which we should, drones that can fly thousands of feet undetected with infrared cameras, and we probably could find a Bigfoot pretty quickly. That if it has normal body heat.
One of the first Bigfoot investigations I did was in Bailey, Colorado. And it was a nurse that had moved back from Hawaii. And she had this cabin that butted up to the national park. She physically saw what she described as a shorter Bigfoot running across the back of her backyard. So we went out there. You learn things when you do investigations. I don't want to say just Bigfoot, but when you do UFO investigations, there's a lot of things that if you don't actually run an investigation right, you may take some of the evidence to think is actually related to that investigation where it's actually Mother Nature doing it. I had cameras set up, I had motion sensing cameras, and I had DVR cameras set up. We spent a couple of nights out there, so I had DVR cameras set up there at night. And we would put food on the balcony of her porch because she said the food was being taken. Now, at that point, I never saw any footprints. At that point, it was just doing an investigation. So the next morning we come out and the food's gone off of the plate. We're like, oh yeah, all right. So I'm going through my video footage from the DVR. And that's where I learned about flying squirrels. It's really cool. I had footage of a squirrel jumping like, I don't know how many feet from a tree branch onto the balcony, eating the food off the plate and then jumping back. I'm thinking, okay, debunked. That is. But she still physically saw a Bigfoot out there. The back of her house, the forest was there, and then there was a hill that kind of slumps up, and there was snow up there. So we started climbing up and figuring, well, maybe if something came down, it came from inside the national forest. And as we got in and where we started seeing snow, I'm looking right down, and there's footprints. And I get chills now, even, first time I've seen that. So, the footprints were basically this big in the snow. They were at least 20 inches. We followed them backwards, where they were coming from, and it went into these rocks. It was a little ways. So we lost track of the sites, and then we followed them down towards where the cabin was. And as we came down, following the footprints off the edge of the hill, and there was about 4 feet in between each print, we come across these 2 giant aspen logs, and they're a good 18 feet, 20 feet tall, and they were crossed like this. And they just didn't fall. You could clearly see that the branches on the trees, that they came down and they were placed in a branch to make an X. Now, if you do Bigfoot investigations, Bigfoot likes to put markers. I think maybe that's where maybe the Native Americans learned, trail markers, because Bigfoot does trail markers too. And so they'll do the trail markers, and if you're ever out in an area where there's been Bigfoot sightings, how you look for the trail markers is you get off the trails and you follow the animal trails. They're a little bit different, a little harder to find, but you can see them. The hunters know them because they follow the trails when they're doing deer or elk hunting. So you're on an animal trail and you look up about 10 feet, and you can see some of the markers where their tree branches are broken and twisted around. And so we actually saw a couple of those. We're following them, but the X, if you went past where these X was, then you started getting into cabins, people that were living down there. So it was almost as if stay away from that area because people are down there. And the markers went the other way. And that was one of those big moments for me where I realized that not only is there something that large out there walking, I can see evidence of the footprints.
Well, when you come back into the Bigfoot stories, you're looking for what would be the evidence, because the main thing that people say, and why we call it a Bigfoot, is because there are some big footprints that have been found. Whatever this is that made this particular footprint, you got height, you got size, weight for the impression, and so they make a determination that this is some large creature. By looking at the steps, then you say, okay, it walks on two legs, and so it's got human-like characteristics. Who made those footprints is still why we're searching. And now, again, that comes into, you've seen all kind of hoax where people are doing these things. And I think it's all because these tracks generally disappear. Because we can't trace it to an origin. To say, okay, we at the doorway or the cave where it went into. Let's go in there and get it. So we don't have that, and so typically that's been the problem when it comes down to the evidence in the footprints, and it's keeping this whole thing mystical.
When it comes to physical evidence, there's enough circumstantial evidence. If someone said that someone tried to break into my house last night, and I saw footprints going to the back door, and I said someone's trying, and you could see evidence of someone getting in, that's enough that would convict a person if they caught him. We have that evidence on Bigfoot. We have enough evidence that we could convict Bigfoot, for being Bigfoot. There have been, and there still is, there's good evidence out there of people taking pictures, but it's always questionable because Bigfoot evidence is always questionable. Now, here's the interesting, my take on Bigfoot. This is one of the reasons why I believe it's really hard to capture Bigfoot evidence or to see Bigfoot. As humans, we've been acclimated to technology. And from the day we're born, every year we get older, we'll lose some of our hearing. We'll lose a lot of the high frequencies. Why? Because there's just so much noise. When you get my age, you can get tinnitus and you lose a lot of your hearing. But it's because there's so much noise in our environment. And you have to understand that the vast majority of the United States is not occupied. As humans, we like to be together. But if you fly over Colorado, you'll be flying over places that are untouched. That's just the way it is. Even California, you fly out of California and you'll see that we all like to congregate in cities and areas, and the rest is just like untouched. So when you live in that isolation, your senses are a lot more heightened. So your hearing is more heightened because that's the way you survive. We don't do that anymore as humans. We rely on technology, to keep us safe. So the first thing is hearing. Their hearing is always heightened, and it never gets damaged due to loud noises and stuff. So their hearing is pretty good. But what people don't realize is there's been tests with human eyes that our human eyes can actually detect infrared. Now, our brains, over evolution, our brains have decided we don't need to see infrared. But there are scientific studies where they've taken groups of people and they've flashed infrared lights, and their eyeballs have actually twitched. So the eye actually see the cones in your eye. They'll actually see the infrared, but the brain doesn't acknowledge that they saw it. So the person will just stand there going, no, I didn't see it. But yet the eyes moved. It's interesting. So at one point, our human eyes, and we have phenomenal eyesight. Again, too, it deteriorates due to technology. So now you have a Bigfoot that lives in this area where, due to evolution, maybe the infrared capability is still there. So that means every time we put motion sensing cameras with infrared lights, they could see the infrared flash. They know to stay away from that area. Anytime anybody's out there shooting in night vision and they're using infrared lights, they can see the infrared light. I just interviewed a lady the other day who claims to be able to see an aura. They can see the energy. Well, we give off energy as humans. We give off radiation. We give off infrared. And our eyes were at one point capable of actually seeing that, but over evolution, we've lost that. So now you have Bigfoot that has great hearing, has eyes that can pick up infrared, and there's a form of ESP. Now you go, what, ESP? Come on, give me a break. Guess what? We all have it. There's people out there that are very intuitive that can actually pick up this negative energy. But we all have it. And if you don't think you have it, all you got to do is think about, have you ever been sitting in your car at a stoplight or sitting in a coffee shop? You just got this feeling someone's staring at you. You just got this feeling. And you can't see him with your peripheral vision. But and you turn around, some guy's staring at you. Happens in cars all the time. Guess what? That's a form of ESP. Now, Bigfoot, if they have that, it's been heightened. It's been accelerated due to their environment, due to the fact that that's part of their lifestyle of survival. So it's heightened. So not only can they hear when something is different sounds from what they're used to, not only can they see pretty well and see maybe infrared, but they can sense you too. Now, as a UFO investigator and as a cattle mutilation investigator, I've set up cameras, night vision cameras, motion sensing cameras in areas looking for aliens that are, supposedly doing the cattle mutilations, or areas where there's Bigfoot sightings. And I'll never forget, when I first started doing it, I was getting these great pictures of deer posing for the camera. I went, well, these are Moultrie game cameras. They're good cameras. This is what deer hunters and elk hunters use. And I couldn't, and I'm going, well, that's just coincidence. And then it happened again and again. Different investigations, deers are just sitting there and they're smiling at the camera. I'm going, all right, enough of this. So I contacted one of the techs and I said, how do they know that the camera is there? He goes, well, first off, cameras, motion sensing cameras, it's a sonar beam. And it's just like with a submarine, it's a sonar beam. And when you break the beam walking by, it takes a picture. Okay, that's pretty much how it works, motion sensing. But it's a very high-pitched beam. We can't hear it. Maybe animals can. So if they hear, you walk into an area and there's a ambient sound and you hear and as you walk by, it goes, it pitched because you interrupted the beam. They're going to see where it came from. Animals are very, very in tune to their environment. So anything that's not part of their environment that even has human smell on it, they're going to pick right up. So if you're out there looking for Bigfoot and you put your cameras up and stuff, well, you just left your smell on that camera. I've got deer scent. Sometimes I'll spray deer scent on the camera to try and mask human scent. Hunters do that all the time. And so you try different things. But then again, too, that camera is out of place. It is not supposed to be in the middle of a forest. And animals that are very in tune, mammals are very in tune to their environment, can spot it right off. So there's multiple things with Bigfoot that I don't think they're spiritual. I don't think that they're, that they're aliens. I think they've always been here. They may not be as abundant as we are. We're, as humans, we breed like rabbits. But, a Bigfoot, maybe they only have one offspring. Supposedly, the family may only be, a male, female, and two offspring at the most. And then they travel, they have a clan, and once they leave the clan, they're on their own, and they're like the proverbial Crocodile Dundee doing walkabouts. And they stay moving, and they either follow weather patterns or they follow food patterns, animals. It's really hard to say.
So when it comes down to the ultimate evidence, there's always the big question. How is some creature that maybe ape-like creature is evading some of our most sophisticated ways of search? What type of technology does it have or uses? And I think that spars the question to take the Bigfoot theory off planet, right? But at the same time, why can't we find them? And I think that's going to be the biggest question of them all. And it's bigger than finding them. Because now that why, and we got to get past the narrative of, okay, it's legendary. Oh, it's secretive, like some, cat in the jungle that we haven't seen, or some, special, jungle bird or something. This is bigger than that, of course. It's the Bigfoot. But the whole point is, why and how is this thing really evading us? But yet we have sightings all over the United States that are popping up, and people truly are saying this. Now, we still got the other elements of never really catching the ungrainy photo. However, I still have a thing for that because I'm a UFO investigator, so we get the same question. And the reason for that is most humans and people, when they see something, tend to try to zoom in on with their phones. And what they don't know is that pixelation happens, and then we have to zoom in on that. And now the footage, because your camera on your phone doesn't have a 500-foot zoom lens, so quite naturally you're going to do that. And so that answers that question of the grainy photo. So we're going to get that. But the other part is, how are they hiding? And the other part, are they cold-blooded? Because they have to be if we don't pick them up on radar or any type of the heat sensors like a human would if you were looking for something. So what causes that? Is that part of their DNA? Is that part of their technology of camouflage that's built in within them of hiding? And it could be just standing right there. So I don't know. We need to look into that, though.
Out of all the areas that I've investigated, I've never investigated a case where it was a direct harm to human beings, is what I'm trying to say. Now, granted, if you shoot a Bigfoot, they're going to retaliate. If you see an alien, you shoot an alien, they may retaliate. If you happen to see these guys or these things, I don't know how they think, So if you come across Bigfoot, same thing with cattle mutilations. We've had UFO sightings. We have balls of light sightings around cattle mutilations. Who's ever doing it? They're killing cows, but they're leaving the carcasses with the ranchers. Yet the ranchers themselves may be afraid, but I've never investigated a case where the ranchers have been hurt.
I would like to start thinking as a fan, is there anything happening with Bigfoot that'll actually produce the results that we're looking for? And what would that result be? And that would be a real live Bigfoot standing before me. I don't know. I don't think we're there.
And even in Death Valley, California, I was part of a research team, but I helped them research the area and gave the information to the team out there. But supposedly there's areas in Death Valley where there's these caves or something where people have seen gigantic skeletons. It's kind of interesting stuff. Now, I've tried to do a lot of follow-up on it, and they didn't find the skeletons they were looking for, but there was enough stories, in the area from people that have lived there for years that have come across these large skeletons, and they'd be about the size of a Bigfoot. So it'd be kind of interesting to see whether or not it was actually Bigfoot or we have giants living among us at one point. But out here in Colorado, I've seen Bigfoot footprints. I've seen them in the snow. I've seen them, in the forest, and I've done a few investigations out here, enough to know that there's something big running around out here, and you better respect it.
One of the phenomenal parts of this Bigfoot legend was that the Native Americans really revered the Bigfoot. In fact, they looked at them as more spiritual beings, and it's said that they even had ceremonies where they would worship the beings and also literally ask them for guidance. And so, which probably in all state that they didn't see them as any type of bad source of energy or some type of spirits or even a bad entity itself. And so the Bigfoot was seen as good in the Native American history.
When you talk to people that actually have had firsthand experiences, it's just like when you do UFO investigations, it's hard to call them, well, are you lying? Now, I could have taken any of these guys and done a polygraph test, and I can guarantee they would have passed the polygraph test. They actually saw what they saw. But yeah, Bigfoot's out here, and you can see there's evidence. Matter of fact, if anybody's in Colorado, if you go to Bailey, Colorado, there's a Bigfoot museum there, and there's a nice big map that shows you recent sightings, of Bigfoot. And, it's pretty cool. I always go up there and talk to the guy who runs it and get all the latest, of what's going on in that area.
So when I started doing a little more research and wondering were there any other sightings or have anyone famous actually seen a Bigfoot, and what I discovered, there was a report from a climber. His name was Sir Edward Hillary. He was one of the first persons that climbed Mount Everest. And what the story said that while he was there, him and his Sherpa was making camp. And what they seen while they was there really blew them away was an ape-like creature that walked by their camp while they was doing that. And since that was more documented, I think that was probably one of the earliest stories of the Bigfoot or Sasquatch story. And besides, of course, we have all heard of Jimmy Carter, one of our ex-presidents. But this one here probably stood out the most and probably lend the most credibility because of the environment that it was seen in.
I actually talked to someone that works for our government that says that our government has been tracking Bigfoot. Now, unfortunately, I can't verify that. All I could verify is the fact that he worked for him. But he told me some stuff that I learned as an investigator that was kind of like, interesting. And he said they're able to track them from satellites because of the heat sensors. We have spy satellites. When I worked at Rockwell International, I was part of a spy satellite program, and I only knew that much. But I learned enough about the spy satellite that it could pick up heat signatures of humans walking by. Now, so you have a human now that's 10 feet tall and, 3.5, 4 feet wide, would be a pretty good heat signature. We all give off, like I said earlier, we're all radioactive. We all give off infrared. We all give off radiation. We're a living circuit. So they're able to track clans, maybe not families as much as if they knew where they were. But supposedly every so many years, based on what this guy said, and then based on some of the Native American stories I've heard, sometimes the families get together back to their clan for a little bit. Now, supposedly here in Colorado, some of the stories are it's above Fairplay, where we have the Continental Divide. That area is supposedly where one of the clan meets, and that's just based on talking to local investigators and local Native Americans. Out here in Colorado would be the Ute tribe.
So in any of these phenomena, especially the legends of Bigfoot, we still have to deal with hoaxes. People who are going out here making fake tracks, breaking tree limbs, maybe even putting on the outfit itself, because you do hear this a lot. That makes it more difficult because you're looking for the evidence and then someone want to go out here and put a hoax. Now, the question is, could that be a government operative throwing us off the trail, creating misinformation to really get the public not really interested in the Bigfoot legend? We don't know. But that's always been something I've always wondered. Why would somebody want to do that? Okay, it'll probably be funny. It will probably be a story for the ages. It probably can go viral. But what would happen when they out there doing that hoax and then they find themselves standing in front of a real Bigfoot? And the Bigfoot is saying, why are you doing me like this? You know what I'm saying? You're causing so much problems for me. You know what I'm saying? I think that will be a conversation. So, I don't know.
Did an investigation in Golden, Colorado, and we found markers. And when we were following the markers, one marker would go this way, and then another would go, and then what it did, it actually pointed us towards a stream. So then we started following the stream. We come to this opening area, because it's really thick out there in the woods, and we're a good 10,000 feet up. You can start smelling something, like a skunk. And then the hair on our arms started, and it felt like we were being watched. Anyway, we decided, okay, maybe it was just our imagination because we smelled something unusual. And usually there's an unusual smell to Bigfoot. Some investigators claim that what they do is they kill skunks and they use the scent gland of a skunk and they rub it on them to take their scent off. So we decided, okay, we think we're being watched, so we're going to follow the stream back. And when we were following the stream back, there was a log that had dropped or fallen, and a pretty good size when it was an aspen. It was a good size log. And so we decided, okay, there was 4 of us, and we're talking, and when we hit the log, Joe and I are going to stay back there. I have my camera, and the other 2 guys are going to keep walking, and they're going to be talking like they're talking to us, carrying on a conversation, and we're going to hide. And so we went to that log, and we hid behind the log, and we had the cameras. We were there a couple minutes, and we could hear the stream, the water in the stream, and obviously you could hear splash, splash. Swear to God, splash, splash. Something bipedal, 2 legs, was walking in the stream. Now that kind of makes sense. That's how you hide footprints. You walk in a stream. Splash, splash. And it was getting louder. And I'm all like shaking, and Joe wears glasses, and his eyes are bigger than his glasses. And I'm like holding the camera like this, and I got it on, and I'm like, oh my God, this thing's going to come up on us. And we're there, and it stopped. And we couldn't hear walking in the stream anymore. And so we waited about 10 minutes, and we go, I don't know what happened. Oh, maybe it made us. Maybe it knew we were here. So we got up and started heading back towards the stream. And when we started following the stream back a little bit, and we're only talking about maybe 25 feet or so, not that far. Yeah, there were these big boulders on the side of the stream, and you could see water splash marks on the side of the rocks of the boulder, the boulders. So something was in the stream, and at the last minute decided to jump on the boulders and leave. And that was pretty cool. So I don't know, I can't tell you for a fact it was Bigfoot, but whatever it was, it seemed like, it jumped a good 5.5, 6 feet up on this boulder and took off.
Now, there's always been stories that have come about, one in particular, the wild man of the woods, or the Neanderthal man, all of these stories. Now, some of the stories I've heard, which are similar to the Bigfoot relations, but these stories seem to appear that this is more human related than the Bigfoot. These are found throughout the United States, and people kind of acknowledge it, and probably in a little more acceptance than the Bigfoot legend. But then I've read stories where there's been evidence of the wild man surface, and then quickly the government or something swoops in and shut down the investigation of that. So maybe, again, this is something that they do know exists. And so there we go. They're always hiding something they don't want us to know.
I went back and did another investigation in Bailey, Colorado, where 2 women actually saw a Bigfoot with their own eyes run by. They basically heard this like a tree branch snap, and this Bigfoot run by, and he not really too far away, and he was so close that they could see gray hair on him, like maybe he was older, because they get gray hair too. and they were in shock. Well, we heard about this, and it's really cool because the more you do Bigfoot investigations, the more you realize that they're very curious, and males are very intrigued with female humans too, and they like to watch the women. And I think what happened is this male was watching these two ladies walk, and he was just spying on them, and the tree branch snapped. We actually found it. It was a branch about this big, and it was probably about 2.5 inches in diameter. You could see where it was broken, and right where it was broken, a little further down, we found Bigfoot footprints. Some other stories are sometimes they like to show themselves. They'll run inside or run outside and present themselves to other people like, hey, look at me. Some other stories, I don't know. I always like to think that maybe he kind of screwed up. And now, when I interviewed him, I asked him, I said, was anything unusual happened to you before you actually saw the Bigfoot run by? And they said, no, not really. We were walking through the woods and stuff. I said, did you feel anything thrown at you, or anything that, not thrown at you, but thrown in front of you? And I go, no. And the other lady goes, well, that was that pine cone that hit me on the back, And I go, where? And I go, well, over here. We walked back, and there was no pine trees with pine cones on it. So and that's another thing too, is sometimes they like to get your attention, and so they'll throw things at you. We investigated that one and found footprints. I went back again a week later. I brought with me a guy named Daniel who lives in an area, and he's a search and rescue. And his job is to look for people who are lost in the national forest, the U.S. Search and Rescue Team. And I brought an actual tracker with me to teach me and to look for, and this guy found all kinds of evidence. So not too far from where they were, we found footprints in the pine needles. We couldn't make casts of them because they were just it was the footprint on a pine needle, and you can see the outline. And it was in a run. It was 9 feet between left and right foot. So that was the time where he was kind of running. There was a dirt road that came around a corner, and there's a big tree here. And then it was really cool because at the edge of the tree, you could see, after Daniel pointed it out, he goes, yeah, normally this is where we would see a human sat here because they're lost and they don't know where they're going. They sit down. But whoever sat here had butt cheeks this big. And you can see an imprint to the right side as if someone put their fist on the ground to get up. And he pointed all that out. He goes, it's not a nest or deer den or anything like that. He goes, it's clearly someone was sitting here. The more I worked with Daniel, the more I realized that even the search and rescue guys come across Bigfoot evidence, and he has in the past. He told me a story where a lady was lost, and search and rescue went out, and they split up. And so as he's going in one direction, his partner's going another direction, and he gets further in the woods, he hears a like a whistle. And he's thinking, wonder where that's coming from. Maybe it's, the lady or something. So he started following that sound, and he followed for probably a good hour or so, just like just nothing, just like a hey you type of little whistle. And darn if he didn't walk right up on this lady, and she was standing next to a stream crying. She was lost. Something had guided him, or someone, or Bigfoot had guided him to the lady, and he found her. That particular Bailey case made it on Finding Bigfoot, the TV show. So one of my Bigfoot cases actually made it, a TV show, because it's such a good case. It was really such a good case. And since then, we've had Bigfoot sightings. I live in Colorado Springs. And we've had Bigfoot sightings at Pikes Peak, and Fairplay, and, well, of course, just on the other side of Fairplay, we have the Continental Divide that basically separates the U.S., the left side and the right side of the U.S. Water from the left side of the Continental Divide goes into the Pacific, to the Atlantic. That goes way up. So the theory is the Bigfoot are traveling north to south, south to north along the Continental Divide, Just like if you go to the East Coast, the Appalachian Mountains are the same way. The Bigfoot follow that too, because we've got a lot of sightings of Bigfoot in that area too. We actually had a sighting that was a 911 call. This was on Gold Camp Road, which is just outside of Colorado Springs. And I went up early the next morning to see if I could find evidence. And I did find a big rock on the side. It's just a dirt road that follows a mountain. It's a 4x4 road. And I found like a big rock that was pushed aside, like something stepped on it. And then I found an impression in the middle of the street, but just like one. But it didn't look like a footprint. It was just like an impression. And then there was a ledge on the other side. And then up here about maybe 5.5 feet, you could see where something jumped, you know. I mean, yeah, it could have been an elk, you know. But this is exactly where the eyewitness said, you know, a Bigfoot ran by, or, you know, maybe some giant guy in a ghillie suit, you know. But that was pretty close.
And I think Bigfoot, even for you all making movies on it, you know, it's always intriguing because there's not a lot of evidence out there. So the storytelling part is probably the best part.
All I'm basically saying is, you know, just be aware that they may not be here for us. They're here for them. Same thing with Bigfoot. You know, if you come across it, just remember you're just a human.